Welcome to Jazz Zone Together, our new online jazz community where we will provide jazz educator and classroom resources, interviews with jazz educators, artists, and celebrities, along with valuable tips and repertoire suggestions. Today, we welcome renowned musician, event producer, and jazz producer Marty Ashby. Marty has contributed a historic legacy of events and recordings to the world of jazz music. Now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Dick Dunscomb to conduct our interview with Marty. Dick, take it away.
Thank you, Bob. Today's special. This is very special. Marty is, as you will learn, an ultimate musician, person, and creator. Welcome, Marty.
Hey man, it's great to be with you, Dick, and great to see your face and hear your voice in real time, man.
Same here. Well, let's start out. We know that your musical career started at a very early age. And please, if you would, outline those early years and how they led to your extensive music career.
Well, I grew up in central New York in a little town called Baldwinsville, which is outside of Syracuse. And it was a perfect place to grow up. It was all about baseball for me and eventually music. My dad had a music store and was a musician, a guitarist, and he played accordion and would do a whole bunch of other things, drove a school bus and had a TV repair business. He was an entrepreneur before that term was even coined, I think. And when I was 7 years old, I got the mumps. Now, no one gets the mumps anymore, but in those days, when you got the mumps, you stayed home from school for about 2 weeks because you were so contagious and, the whole household would get it and so on and so forth. And my dad said, you're going to be home for 2 weeks. You're not that sick because you're not that sick with the mumps. He said, you want to learn how to play the guitar? And I said, well, sure. And he didn't go down to the music store until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So for 2 weeks, I spent, 8 a.m. until 3 with my dad learning how to play the guitar. And that changed my life. At 8, we had our first gig. And I think we have a photo that we're going to show of the family band. So I'm playing the guitar in the middle. My brother Jay, who you know well, Dick, is on trombone, who is a little younger. My brother Dale on drums. Mom was on electric bass, and my dad also on guitar. And that's how it started. At 8 years old, I was doing gigs and did that for, all my life now. But, when I was growing up, to be honest, man, I thought that's what everybody did. I thought, everybody's got a family band. And of course, you play all over the place and play weddings and bar mitzvahs and openings of, in those days, strip malls, not even enclosed malls yet. And we did all kinds of things as a family band. It was very exciting to have music be around the house all the time. It was just always there. And, when I got into, middle school in those days, junior high, they called it then, the guitar was not in the marching band. So I ended up playing the tuba with Bill Cantwell, great band director, friend of the family to this day, taught me tuba. And I killed it and ended up, when I got to college, I was also a tuba minor and played all that. And we had great band directors in Central New York, and the New York State School Music Association, NISMA, I'm sure you're familiar with, had a great music program. So I was, playing all kinds of music and classical music and jazz, and took classical guitar, but really learned the entrepreneurial spirit from my dad, who would do anything. He's making records and doing all kinds of different things. But it was really a great way to grow up with music around me all the time.
What a beautiful path. Okay, Marty, let's reminisce for a minute. We first met each other in Montreux, Switzerland, a few years ago.
Yeah.
You were with a group from Ithaca College in New York. Tell our viewers about that experience and what it led to.
Well, that's quite a story. Dick, and I remember those moments very well. To run the tape back a little bit to get to Montreux, I graduated high school in 3 years because I was blessed to be academically, probably pretty much on time, and I went to Ithaca College for music because I knew I wanted to be a musician. And when I got to Ithaca, I was no longer the best musician. It was quite a awakening moment, if you will. There's other cats that played better than I did. So that was an interesting experience. But one thing that happened there was I ended up in Dave Riley's vocal jazz ensemble as part of the rhythm section. Played in the big band with Steve Brown too, but the vocal jazz ensemble did a lot of gigs, and I was really interested in playing a lot of gigs. So I ended up in that too. And it was a very special few years. The group of people that came together with Dave Riley, who I know you knew well, Dick, rest his soul, and the sweetest cats in the world. He brought together a group of singers and musicians that really gelled and really worked hard together, had fun together, loved each other, and made amazing music. And the one vocal group year was super special. And thanks to you, we ended up being able to go and perform at the Montreux Jazz Festival and a variety of other things. And the group was made up of what became the New York Voices, which I'm sure many of the viewers here are familiar with the New York Voices. And we toured Europe as part of that tour with my band, which was called Aurora at the time, which was a 3-horn band and kind of playing everything from Chick Corea to Earth, Wind and Fire, in jazz clubs and fusion clubs. And so we combined kind of my band with voices from the vocal jazz ensemble at Ithaca College. And again, with your help, got to play Montreux and then several other things that we did when we were together. And that was really the launch of the New York Voices as we know them today. And I'm happy to say that they're still together some 30 odd years later. This was 1986, believe it or not, Dick, when we did this. And I've got the original poster from that year, which I think we have a graphic of. And it was interesting because the poster for the festival that year was by Andy Warhol. And Andy is, of course, from Pittsburgh. And I was living in Pittsburgh with the Pittsburgh Symphony at the time. And it was really quite magnificent. And I'm so glad that I saved the poster because I understand it's worth a lot of money these days. So it was an investment that we'll keep back. But I remember that trip, Dick, as I'm sure you do. I remember sitting by the lake at Montreux, having lunch before we played. And we were all there, man. You were there. We were all there. Dave was there, the whole band. And I could, to this day, I can still see it and feel it and hear it, the sounds, and how beautiful it was and how honored and grateful and blessed we all felt to be there. So thank you, man. That was a magnificent moment that changed all of our lives.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah, it does, man. It does.
It's amazing that morphing of the college group into the super professional group that it was to become.
Yeah.
You could tell that at that moment. Yeah. They were almost there. And as I followed them and continue to follow them throughout the years, it's a thrill to know that this kind of development is happening not only today in the universities, but throughout the years. And so congratulations to you on that whole concept. Now, your work with major symphonies, opera, ballet companies became an important step in your development of jazz events. Tell us more about that and your work with the Manchester Craftsmen Guild.
Yeah, man, it was quite a journey to get to where I am right now. I mean, I tell students when I speak at different schools and different things about the music business and just life in general that it's not always a straight line. Sometimes you have to zig and zag and do this that ends up teaching you that. And I find things today, man, that I probably learned, on the job training 30 years ago that I'm still pulling out today in different elements. But the way that it went down is that when I was in Ithaca, at Ithaca College, I started producing jazz festivals because frankly, I was tired of playing smoky bars. I had done that since I was 7 years old with my dad. And I'd played so many gigs by the time I already got to college. I didn't want to do that because I'd done so much of it, from, moose clubs to Masonic halls to whatever, man. I played them all, So I started producing jazz festivals, and I produced the first Ithaca Jazz Festival in 1979, 80. And we did it for a few years. I learned a ton. Back in those days, on the music industry side topic, you called people up or wrote a letter. It wasn't email. It wasn't, this is pre-fax, man. And people love to talk about what they do, I've found. I think it's an art that's being lost with everything being so text or, Snapchatty or something like that. So I always tell everybody, call people up, call me up. I'll talk to you about the business. I called up Helen Keane and Todd Barkin, who is one of my best friends to this day, and Frank Malfitano and George Ween's office. I call and John Levy, who I was with, a week before he passed at age 99, and Frank Modica, people you remember, man. These were the mogul agents and managers of the time that managed Bill Evans and cats like that, and Joe Williams, and they would talk to me. So I learned about producing festivals through Frank Malfitano and other people like that, and Todd. And when I moved to New York, to become a jazz star, right? Because that's what everybody did. Chasing this girl that you may know, her name's Kim, from the New York Voices. And what I found in New York, and I'd never been to New York, Dick. I had just never been there, and moved with $600 in my pocket, and had to do about 3 or 4 jobs to make it all work. One of the gigs I got, in addition to this kind of production company, we ended up producing these 30 block street fairs, and I produced the Boys Choir of Harlem Street Fair, and some really amazing things that I was able to do. But to survive, my third job of the day, after doing some gigs, was working for the New York Philharmonic. And I'll never forget this, man. I saw a little ad in the Village Voice. That's a newspaper for all of you that don't remember newspapers, a weekly. And it said, sell classical music. And I had a music degree, and I love classical music. And I'll never forget, Dick, I can see it like it's right here. Walking into Avery Fisher Hall, and that's where Lincoln Center is, folks, in case you haven't been there. It's a nice little hall. They got a nice little band. And I was in the elevator going up to my interview, and there was this young man. He was maybe my age, a couple years older, maybe at the time. This is, early 20s for me. He had a stack of music in his hands. And I said, oh, hey, man, how you doing? What do you do? He said, well, my job is to put the music on the stands for the orchestra. I said, that's a gig? Really? I had no idea that there were these 5 floors of people that took care of the orchestra. I kind of knew, but I didn't, but I did, and I didn't until I was there. And then I said, oh my God, this is a real industry. And so to make a long story short, I got the gig. And the gig was selling subscriptions over the telephone in the evening, man. And that was before telemarketing was a 4-letter word. It was brand new. We were doing millions of dollars, Dick, over the phone. Millions of both concert tickets and donations. And, because of my dad's innate sales ability that I got, right, I moved very quickly, man, and ended up getting an offer to work and manage the Cleveland Orchestra's program, and moved to the Cleveland Orchestra, the inaugural season of Christoph von Dohnanyi. It was stunning orchestra as well. And what I was teaching people, I had 60 staff, Dick, was how to have a conversation about the music, man. That's it. And the sales meetings were playing the music and talking about, you know, Mahler 1. Right? Sounds like Pat Metheny to me, right? So we would talk about the music and how to engage people in the music. And it was absolutely spectacular learning through that. And then I worked with the National Symphony, some opera and theater and ballet companies. Eventually, the Pittsburgh Symphony called and said, you know, I understand that you might be available, and ended up with Pittsburgh. But I learned about marketing, development, subscription marketing, all kinds of institutional development things, board development, through working with these other, what I call the OPAs, the other performing arts, opera, theater, ballet, dance, all that. And then there's jazz. And at the time, as you well know, there were not very many jazz institutions that had infrastructure like that. And so in 1986, Billy Taylor, Dr. Taylor, one of my big mentors, everybody's mentor, and Frank Malfitano and Todd Barkin, we did a panel at the Jazz Times convention. Remember the Roosevelt Hotel and doing those conventions? And it was about creating a national jazz subscription series model, which we never really did do, but I was able to start the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild Jazz Program in 1987. And that has been an amazing run. That's kind of a long story to get to the Craftsmen's Guild, which I know you want to hear more about the Craftsmen's Guild, but the backstory I think is interesting, that it was really based on my desire and Billy Taylor's encouragement that we could present jazz music at the level of the other performing arts and not apologize for it, right? So that's what we've done, man. You know, now 34 seasons later, here at MCG Jazz, which I encourage everybody to check out. It's mcgjazz.org. We've had everybody here. In the early years, Dick, you'll appreciate this, because the center is in an area of town that had a lot of crime, the Manchester neighborhood. And I literally had to go pick people up to bring them to the building, because they didn't think that I could actually get Dizzy Gillespie there, or Carmen McRae, or Max Roach, or Ray Brown, or Tito Puente, or Joe Williams, but they've all been there. And now I don't have to pick anybody up. They come freely. And we've had one of the longest running subscription series in the country since we started. You know, then Jazz at Lincoln Center started a couple years later, and now SF Jazz and some other institutions have kind of come on board with similar models, you know, with education and concerts and outreach and all that kind of stuff. And it was exciting to be one of the first ones. And we created a record label, as you know, and done 50, 60 records over the years, and an education program that we're working with everything from third graders that we bus in every year, thousands of third graders in the Pittsburgh public schools and areas, to now working in West Virginia and rural West Virginia, bringing music to them, high school students, all the universities here. And, you know, now that we're in this pandemic, we've become a real resource for the local musicians and are providing space for them to rehearse. I created a fund to actually put money in their pocket to be able to play music together. And it's been really exciting, man. It's an honor to have been able to present so many of my idols and the legends that created this music. Because, you know, I'll end this little section on this, man. The last 35 years that I've been presenting at Manchester Guild were really the last of the primary resources that created jazz as we know it. If we think about that, man, and you knew them all like I did, you know, Brubeck and Ray and Tito and Max and Carmen and Dizzy, and they were all at the Guild. And those were the folks that, you know, in my mind, created, you know, kind of jazz as we know it today. And I was able to see and present to Pittsburgh all of them for the most part. You know, later in their lives, most of them, but they were still always creative. As you know, James Moody, to the day he died, was practicing, man. You know? And to be able to do that and be around those cats that I studied, you know, in high school, man, has been a real honor, and I'm very fortunate and very grateful.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
What a phenomenal pathway that you have pursued, and we all owe a big debt to you along that way, because indeed the accomplishments that we enjoy today would not have been there without that. So give us a rundown on some of the most significant jazz events and performances that you have developed, and maybe a story or two.
Well, you know, I always say, you know, the most significant or the most exciting one is the one I'm going to do tomorrow. And that's what keeps me coming back for more, is that I honestly love the fact that there's always more to create, always more to be involved with. But I will say that I have been fortunate to be involved in some very exciting projects. And this is in no particular order. It just, this one comes to mind because we just concluded the World Series last night or this week, day before. And we did a huge project with jazz and baseball a few years back. You may remember Stanley Kaye. You know, he was Buddy Rich's straw boss and a great drummer. He started this band called the Diva Jazz Orchestra with our good friend John LaBarbera some years ago. And we were kind of with them when they started the band, basically. And Stanley was also the musical director for the New York Yankees, which people may not know. And there's a whole long connection between jazz and baseball I won't get into right now, but research it, and there's a big history there. So we did this huge program. We got George Steinbrenner's granddaughter to come and sing, Bill Watrous, rest his soul, amazing trombonist. Well, what you don't know is he was also signed by the New York Yankees. Mm-hmm. And he got home the day that he was signed, and there was a letter from Uncle Sam. He was drafted. So the baseball career went away, but thank God his trombone career didn't go away. But he tells these great stories, man. Bill was a very good friend, about he would carry, when he was on the road with the big band, with his baseball bat. And because he was such a good hitter, and he knew kind of the network from, you know, being signed, you know, to a minor league deal from the Yankees, for heaven's sakes, right? When he was in certain towns, he would call up the minor league and go take batting practice with him, man. Can you dig that? Yeah, he told these great stories, man. So the jazz and baseball thing was really an exciting thing. We've done things with jazz and dance. I've been so into ballet and jazz. We created this thing called Indigo in Motion with the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater. Huge project, major full-length ballet in the big 3,000 seat hall. And so I had, the first segment was with Stanley Turrentine and Ray Brown's trio on stage with the dancers. Kevin O'Day was the choreographer. The second one was a Lena Horne piece. Lena spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh, and that was with a smaller band, and just amazing. The third was choreography by Dwight Roden, who's one of the top choreographers in the world, and it was all Billy Strayhorn music. And we had a full jazz orchestra, stunning. It was reprised a couple years later. We've done several different ballets. I've worked with Dwight. Those are amazing things. You know, I have to go to some of the concerts that we've recorded live that have gone on to become albums that ended up doing pretty well. We had a program with the Count Basie Orchestra and the New York Voices, as we were talking about earlier. This is some 24 years ago, 25 years ago. And we were just starting a record label at the time. We recorded a lot of concerts. We had a big NPR series, you may remember, Dick, back in the early 90s. And we said, well, the NPR series is cool, but maybe we should, record these CDs. Were exploding then, as you may remember. So we started this record label, and the first record we did was with the New York Voices and the Count Basie Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And it won a Grammy. And I admit that back then, some 25 years ago, I had no idea how the record business worked. I'd played on a bunch of records, but I was not a label exec. I was a guitarist and ran a music hall and, did certain things, knew how to make a recording, but it was a Cinderella story, man. And we ended up, winning this Grammy and set the bar a little high for the record label. But we went on to make some other recordings. We did a recording with Yvonne Leans. That's one of my favorite live recordings ever. A live recording with, again, the New York Voices and Paquito de Rivera. It's called Brazilian Dreams. I know you've heard the music, man. And it was a dream that Paquito had to kind of pair vocal Brazilian music with his ensemble, basically. And I played on that record. And we probably have a photo of that recording someplace here. That won a Grammy. We did Paquito and the Panamericana Orchestra, which was this thing that had Dave Samuels and Andy Narell and this Colombian harp player that you've never seen before. Edmar is unbelievable, and Paquito's band, and that won a Latin Grammy. And if I had to pick one more, it would be our very special relationship with Nancy Wilson. Miss Wilson came through John Levy, who John was Nancy's manager for 60 years. They never had a contract, just a hug and a handshake. And I finally got Nancy there to just play the concert season. Her husband, Wiley, was from Pittsburgh. So she always said on stage, well, I married Pittsburgh. And Miss Wilson fell in love with our school because at Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, we're not just a jazz hall. We work with inner city youth in the arts every day. We have a big arts program, after school program that Bill Strickland started some 52 years ago. We also have a vocational training center called the Bidwell Training Center as part of our school, same building. We work with adults every day to retrain them in a variety of jobs, from culinary arts to medical technology to chem tech. We have a greenhouse across the street that grow these beautiful orchids, and we train horticulture. So when Nancy got there, she saw the school and just fell in love with the spirit of what we're doing. And she was trying to get out of her deal with Sony at the time. And I remember John Levy said, here, call this guy up. I won't say his name, but probably everybody knows who he is. Nice cat. And we figured out how to get Nancy out of her deal with Sony to record for our school. And the first record we made was a Christmas record because she'd never made a holiday record. And I'll tell you, Dick, picking out music with Nancy Wilson, going through holiday tunes with my brother Jay was like a dream come true. And the record did very well. We ended up on Oprah. This is a great story. So in those days, Oprah had a Christmas special. You guys may remember those, where she'd do a special show and it'd be 2 or 3, guests, and, she'd interview and so on and so forth. And we'd play a couple tunes. So the Nancy Wilson Christmas is the name of the recording. And we got on Oprah, and I brought all Pittsburghers to come and play. And it was fabulous. The set was beautiful. Oprah was gracious. But on the show was this trio called Destiny's Child. I don't know if anybody remembers Destiny's Child, but that was the group that Beyonce was in. And I'll never forget, man, they were young and gorgeous, I will say. And Beyonce made a point to come to Miss Wilson's dressing room because she wanted to meet Miss Nancy because she got it. And I haven't seen Beyonce since then, aside from some of the Grammys, from afar. on stage. But she was elegant then. She was respectful. She knew who Nancy Wilson was, and was just delighted to be in her presence. I'll never forget that, man. And I didn't know, much about Destiny's Child, quite frankly. We all know about Beyonce now, that's for sure. And so that was a great experience with Nancy. And we went on with Nancy to record 2 more recordings of just really, kind of commercial recordings of Nancy Wilson being Nancy Wilson. And I'm so proud and grateful to say that they won back-to-back Grammys. And Nancy hadn't won a Grammy in 40 years or something like that. And so to have her kind of go out, and they were the last 3 records she made, of course, to have her go out on back-to-backs was special.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. And again, there's another element that we haven't talked about in your career yet, or not much anyway. As an accomplished guitarist, you have performed with many of the leading jazz artists. Please share with us some of the highlights in that aspect of your career.
Yeah, man, I've been, I pinch myself, Dick. I mean, come on, give me a break. He was this kid from Central New York that grew up playing, some Chet Atkins music and some other hip stuff with my dad. But and then I'm on the road with, Paquita de Rivera and playing with Nancy Wilson on special events, and in fact several at the NEA Jazz Masters concerts that we did with IAJE back in the day. Man, played with Nancy there many times. Was on the road with the Dizzy Gillespie Alumni Orchestra. I mean, give me a break. That was James Moody and Frank West, Jimmy Heath, Slide Hampton, Randy Brecker, Claudio Roditi. I mean, these cats. I was the kid on the band, my brother and I, playing with these legends every night. Faddis. That was like a dream come true. We did a couple records together, and it was, I was on the band for several years. Quite an honor, and to play on records with Herbie Mann and Phil Woods, a couple of the Bob Mincer records, for heaven's sake, and then all the Brazilian stuff, with Claudio Roditi and my sister-in-law Kenya, and others. It's in Yvonne Leans. Did a concert down with Shelley Berg down in Florida. It was just Yvonne Leans and I and Adam Rogers. It was just a trio. I played classical guitar, Adam played electric, and Yvonne played piano and sang. And yeah, I mean, talk about going to heaven, man. That was unbelievable. And so many others things, over the years that I've just been so fortunate to be in the presence of these masters and be even near them, let alone on the bandstand with them. What it's done for me as a musician is given me even more respect for the greatness of these musicians and just how dedicated they are. Slide Hampton on the World of Trombones record, I'll never forget, we were making, and in between takes, he's practicing. And, I mean, just, these guys are so dedicated. Ray Brown would come to the Guild when he was there for, 5 days in a row with his trio or whatever. And he'd come over to the Guild in the afternoon just to practice for 2 hours and then go back to the hotel and take a nap, eat dinner, and then come back for the gig. And he was probably, 70 then. Moody, all these cats are the same way, man. Louis Bellson, I got to play, several gigs with Louis Bellson. Talk about the sweetest cat in the world, man. Jeez. But they were so dedicated to their craft and made no apologies about being dedicated to their craft, and that there was always more to learn, always more to get. There's more music that you can discover. And so the fact that I've been able to be on the bandstand with some of them, it's just made me appreciate it and get it that much more, and also understand how far I have to go to even, touch the tip of the iceberg of what these cats are talking about. But it has been a big honor, Dick.
Marty, your role in the music world provides you with a very unique perspective on jazz and what's going on with that today. Share with us your view of the current status of jazz and a picture of what you see in the future.
Yeah, currently there are so many great young musicians out there. I mean, I have to say that every year I'm amazed. We had, I can name a million of them, like the Joey Alexanders of the world, and things like that. There's just these amazing young musicians that are carrying on the tradition of the music, and what I consider, showing my age maybe, but consider it to be a respectful way that takes into account the legacy of what's come before them. That it's not just, well, it's new music and I'm going to play what I hear, in my thing, which, God bless them. But for my taste, I like to hear those that have the historical context within their playing, and yet then take it to a new place. When you think about John Coltrane or any of the masters, you heard where they came from and where they were headed and where they took the music and how it grew. And I just find so many musicians these days. There's a whole bunch in Pittsburgh. We just did a concert last night with these 3 young musicians. This young piano player, Antonio Cruz, I'm going to say his name because he's about 20, with Anton DeFade on bass and George Hyde III on drums. And these young cats just tore it up. And they were playing all historical content from Pittsburgh pianists like Dodo Marmarosa and Billy Strayhorn and Errol Garner and Earl Father Hines. And there's a million of them from Pittsburgh, Sonny Clark. And they played Mary Lou Williams. They played so rich, so historically sound, yet I didn't feel like it was an archive recording. I felt like it was about the freshest stuff I've heard in a real long time. And yet they were playing the music of the masters from Pittsburgh, because that was the concept for the show, this live stream. And so because there's musicians doing that work to carry the music forward, I'm so encouraged, man. I'm so encouraged. We have a weekly radio show here, which I'll share with everyone now. It's on WZUM. You can get it on zum.org. And it's the MCG Jazz Spotlight Show. So every week I pick a new topic. We did everything from honoring, late greats like Freddie Cole. We did a show on him recently, to what we did this week. And that was, I just went to the Jazz Week, which is the kind of the list of what's playing on jazz radios around the country right now. And so I looked at the list, and in the top 25, I picked out, 8 or 9 recordings. And oh my God, stunning music from cats like, Christian McBride and Jeff Hamilton. Gregory Porter had a great thing. The Spanish Harlem Orchestra. Eddie Daniels. Have you heard Eddie Daniels' new record for Yvonne Lean's music? Good God, it's unbelievable. And it was one after another, after another, after another, after another. And these weren't kids. These are established artists. Jeff Hamilton's been on the scene for a couple minutes. The record was stunning. Tamir Handelman played great compositions. So I'm, all pandemic aside, these were all new recordings. Some of them may have been recorded, before the pandemic, not all of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm just so encouraged that the music is thriving. Now, having said that, we need to do some work with the business side. There's no question about it, that the arts are not treated as the national gem that they are. The legacy of these great musicians and artists is not being treated appropriately, in my opinion. These are national treasures, man. These artists that create this music, and we need to treat them as such. We won't get into, administration at the federal level in terms of what that takes to understand that. But I think everybody's pretty clear that in order to do that, we need to have, civic leadership at the local, the state, and the federal level to understand that these musicians are national treasures. It's like taking care of a national park, man. It's our civic duty to take care of these artists because, look, culture is passed on through music and art. And we need to be responsible citizens, humans, to make sure that this stuff is taken care of. I believe that strongly in this music. I've been blessed to play in, a lot of countries around the world, and you can go anywhere and start to play all blues. I can't communicate with them verbally, but I can start to play some tunes or rhythm changes or whatever, and we immediately can lock in. And I think because jazz has become such a universal language, that we have an opportunity in this country specifically to capitalize on that and say that it is part of our economy in a very important way. And since there's such great art still being created every day, all over the place, I think we need to kind of band together, not just as musicians, but as folks that are on the industry side to really lobby for this music and really look at the opportunity to support it in many, many ways that are still yet to be developed.
Beautifully said. A lot of our viewers are jazz educators, and a lot of them are young jazz educators. I know that you have been a fan and a participant with NAJE, IAJE, and now GEN, Jazz Education Network. Speak just a little bit about the development of young jazz educators, students, fans, and so forth with these organizations.
Yeah, man, you're showing my age, man. You're going back to NAJE. Man, that's cruel, Dick. It's funny because the other day, I knew we were going to do this, and I was just kind of sorting through some things, and I pulled out this watch, which I wore today. And this is actually, I don't know if we can see it. This is the Campaign for Jazz. Remember that? This for IAJE, some meeting or something, and everybody got one, and we're trying to raise money for jazz education and so on and so forth. I think, what Jen is doing is fantastic. I think they've kind of zeroed in the bullseye to really focus on young musicians and focus on passing on the lore in a meaningful way about not just how to play, over 2/5s, but the importance of the music to the culture at the same time, which is what I was just talking about. That I think that it can't be just music for music's sake. And it can't be just learning, from this book or that book, or, I should show my collection of every Jamie Aebersold that there is, because I have every single one in the library. It's not just that. And Jamie would be the first one to tell you that. It's about the culture of the music. It's about the people that create the music. It's about the whole lifestyle that goes with the understanding that improvised music is something that you can take into how you improvise in your life. I do these workshops called Jazz is Life for corporate folks and other folks, and tying in the elements of what we do as musicians and how we kind of integrate that into people's lives is not only fun, but it's just the reality that helps you get through life. If you think of as a jazz musician, you can, especially in this day and age in a pandemic, you can really make a big difference in how things work. And I think that, the education institutions out there, not just the service organizations like Jen, and Music Educators Network and all those other ones, but the universities and the high schools and so on and so forth that are having music education programs need to take it just a little step beyond just notes, which I think some are, but I think it's something that we need to be thinking about, that music as a vehicle for mindfulness is something that I think I know resonates with people and can really make a difference and I think increase the market share for our music in a meaningful way if we give a larger context to the power of this music. And it's not just notes. It's the energy and the spirit of this music that can actually change people's lives just as much as the notes.
Yeah. So you have a little surprise for us today.
Oh, right.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to be asked some now, it's about 12 years ago, to get involved with the Musical Instrument Museum, which is in Phoenix, Arizona. A good friend who was here at the Carnegie Museum was hired as the director, Bill DeWalt. And he called me and said, man, I'm doing this museum out here and we're going to have a music hall. And can you help us, kind of think about how to structure it and how to program it and, help with some equipment, the whole 9 yards. So long story short, I got to work with the museum. It was being developed and I worked with it for another 8 or 9 years. So I was there about 10 years. Working. I did an annual holiday Christmas show every year with all different cats from, Marlena Shaw and Claudio Roditi to, Ann Hampton Calloway and Gloria Rubin. I had a bunch of guests. It was really a lot of fun. We had a great time. And I got to actually help curate the first jazz exhibit. And in fact, I think I have a photo that you guys can see now of the exhibit. I got Stanley Turntine's horn in there and Pat Metheny's guitars, and it really came together. Herbie Mann's flutes, Emily Remler's guitar, and many other things. And they came to me at one point and said, we're going to have an acquisition of the Charlie Christian guitar. And I said, oh, one of those that, like he played. And it's like, no. The one he played, like on all those famous records. I forget, it was George Gruhn's collection. I forget whose collection it was. That's terrible. But at any rate, they were getting this. And actually the photo of the exhibit that hopefully you saw here, you can see the guitar in the case. And they said, but they would like you to play it. And I said, well, okay, I'd be honored, happy to, check it out. And they said, no, will you play it on your concert? Because it was like a week in front of the annual concert I was going to do. And I said, well, really? So to make a long story short, it was amazing, Dick. So, I always get there a couple of days ahead of time and rehearse the band because I always, of course, did my Quincy Jones and had to write all new music for every concert, and all this stuff, right? And so I had another arrangement done of Airmail Special is I think what we played. Or 7 Come 11 is maybe the one that we're going to play, 7 Come 11, one of, Charlie's classic ones that he played. So I met the curator and they showed me the guitar. Of course, they got gloves on and, masks. And, they hand me the guitar and they set it up the way that I want it with like my action and the whole 9 yards. And it was like playing the Holy Grail, man. It's Charlie Christian's guitar. So on the concert, they brought it, the cat with the white gloves, brought it out to me and handed it to me. And I played, which I guess you guys will see. I did a little quick edited version of it. So you can kind of hear it. They had a lot of compression on the recording. So it's not quite the guitar sound I would have liked, but give me a break. It was Charlie Christian's guitar. And then the cat with the white gloves comes and gets it and takes it away. And I never see it again, but it was quite an experience to actually get to play that guitar. And
So you know they take it away from me now. You know that, right? I tried the other day to walk out with it, and there was 3 big guys around me in about 3 seconds. So please, George, come on, man. How about a hand? How about a hand for this young man?
I've got some great photos. They brought it, backstage later and let me take photos, like kind of engulfing it. And it was a lot of fun. And I have to say, if you've not been to the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, you must go. It is an unbelievable experience. Don't plan one day. You really need to. You'll see instruments from around the world that you didn't even know existed. The way that they've set up the interactive exhibits is stunning. I just can't say enough about it. The music hall is beautiful. It's like the one here at MCG Jazz. It's intimate. I think it's 300 seats. And they have the world's greatest musicians there of all genre, not just jazz, every world music, everything. So I can't recommend that enough. So you got to come to MCG Jazz in Pittsburgh, and then you can go to Phoenix and you'll be fine. You'll get all the art you need for a minute.
What an opportunity. That was some event. Charlie Christian's guitar. Well, let me say in closing, Marty, this interview has struck a chord in my heart. You're an eloquent speaker, you're informative, and may I say, a beautiful cat. Thank you so much for joining us today on Jazz Zone Together. I hope everybody sees this interview because it's very, very important. Take care, my friend.
Thank you, man. It's great to be with you. Take care, Dick.
Thank you, Marty.
We
To our
good?
viewers, we appreciate you joining us today and for being a part of Jazz Zone Together. We hope you found the presentation of real value. We hope you'll join us for future episodes. In the meantime, please stay safe and please keep making music.